Right. For Auld Lang Syne, eh? And for the future. Well, hello, agus Key Admira Fadge. Hello, and 100,000 welcomes. It's Mishaheen Paddig McNeil. I'm Paddig McNeil, tradition bearer, Gaelic bard, and bard in all of Scotland's different languages, because I love the culture and the language and the way of thinking, the paradigm of this ancient nation which has given so much to humanity. And nowhere is that more exemplified than in traditional verse composed by the bards of old from time immemorial. And here today we are at the fulcrum of the very place that could have changed the history of Scotland and the world forever. Sliabh an Chirim, Sheriff Muir, on the hills above Dunblane. And I'm looking here at the mountain of Dumayet, which sees the soles of my feet every week as we still run up the hills. Just like Cuilche of the Fianna, Finn McCool's men of ancient times. But behind me here is Carnan Rahach, the monument to the McRaes. The McRaes, the valiant clan who stood in the front left of the Jacobite army of 1715. And because there was insufficient cavalry support, they took a serious amount of casualties. But they would never retreat, because that was not in their creed. 12 times they reformed and 12 times they came back. And was it not General Whitman, who was on the side of the English, who admired them for their courage, saying he never saw such a fine line of men standing in perfect unison. And he lamented the fact that they had so many casualties. But the poetry of Sheriff Muir will make sure that this event, like many events in Scotland, will never be forgotten. Oh, we build monuments. We have tour guides. We have all sorts of wonderful things ways in which people can view the history of the country. But what better than from the breath and from the mouth of the bards who were eyewitnesses who lived there at the time. In 1715, there lived in the island of Eigg a man called John MacDonald. He was one of the great Clanranald race. He was known as Ian Tu, Mac Ian, Vic Elaine. That's Ian, son of black-haired Ian, son of Alan. They couldn't use their second names because they got the postman very confused, since everybody had the same second name. He was what they called a vernacular bard, and he composed many a verse at that particular time, but he was an innovator. See, Highlanders were never stuck in a lay-by. They were always willing to innovate, like the great McCrimmon Pipers, who took pipe music to its zenith under the sponsorship, the patronage of Charles II, and so was with Ian Tu. Normally, the Gaelic poems that were composed by the clan bards were in praise of their race, of their chiefs, of the valiance of their men, of the history of their battles to help them to stand strong in the face of the strife. But Ian Du was to introduce a new convention into Highland poetry. It was called allies, whereby, as you'll hear in part of this song, all the clans of the north were invited to stand together in common cause, even ancient enemies such as the Campbells and the MacDonalds in the same muster roll. And if that was not enough, the nobles of the lowlands were to come and join the cause. And no Gael up to this point had ventured to put such a piece together. This is what we called a braasnahag, or an incitement to war. This was a national call to arms. And the way he constructed this wasn't like the old Gaelic strophic metre, which I'll give a few examples of in a minute. This was a new type of convention called Aharan or Auran, which was symmetrical metre, whereby the assonances, the vowels, would resound out like an iambic heartbeat, So when the warriors would strike upon their shields, they would hear it and it would stir them up, being reminded of the heroic deeds of their ancestors. Well, this particular poem opens out with an ancient prophecy. And the prophecy stems back to the days of the great and the one and only William Wallace. There lived a man called True Thomas, or Thomas the Rhymer. And according to the oral tradition, he was taken into the land of the Síochána, the fairy folk, or the queen of the fairy land. And he was in there for 7 years and a day. And he was given a gift of two things: a tongue that would never lie, and an eye that would see into the future. And he foresaw and he foretold of many things that was going to happen in Scotland's future. He saw the day when a French queen would rule Scotland, who would become the Queen of France as well, our beloved Queen Mary, one of the greatest monarchs we ever had. How tragic her end. One day her son would be the king of a united Britain, and of course that was James VI. But he also foresaw the day when there would be a great battle hard in Achluai, north of the Clyde, and the Gaels would arise from their glens, and Highland culture would have parity, equity with that of the rest of the world, being recognised as a cultural entity. This was Gaelic nationalism, and indeed Scottish nationalism. I don't believe all these lies of history who tell us that the Jacobite cause wasn't nationalist. Was it not in King James's proclamation in October of 1715? He said in his proclamation, quote, "to restore the kingdom to its most ancient liberation and independence." That's what King Jamie said. Oh, it wasn't Scots versus English on Sheriff Muir, it was nationalist versus unionist. That was the battle. So the song opens out with this ancient prophecy of Thomas's, and it translates, "This is the time of the prophecy to be fulfilled, when every noble will arise from their glen, and wild, fierce anger in the service of the crown." And the second verse, "On that account, every prancing horse shall shout for joy. On that account, the English shall be destroyed, and the French, our companions, shall be at our back." Then he begins to enumerate all the different clans. It's a long song, so I'm just going to give you a few verses. "If the MacDonalds should arise," of course the MacDonalds always have to go first. "The MacDonalds should arise, those fierce thunderbolts, those stout lions, whose ancient right it was to use the red hand. My lord, it would be folly for them to fall upon you." I'll give you a few verses of the song. It's called Aur and Nanfinig and Gaelach. This convention was to be repeated by another Clanranald bard in 30 years later, Alistair MacVeister Alistair, Alexander MacDonald, poet laureate to Bonnie Prince Charlie, who also composed an Allies poem, but it was the invention of Ian Dhu MacDonald of Egg. Here it goes. She shone me shiran jaravaran tada ganakain brasmena manak firova pahonara mavertus nur yeris gak trainer and I hate your glanur lerun ferek ages gereke kusherev shakhrun H ma hif na gal takli hound ach sachush gurlion varek shengavar gaunsesli sund Bisas yn I cair, chigun taing gaf gachwn, bin a Frankich non campi, grehawn cool, the MacDonalds. Nur a year is clondon, no leo and hagarak, na biav her for the hun cast but not garav. Look his of na kodak and nors to life yarak, mo goy gumbagod of gaivatosh gagarev, the MacLeods. Na leo di campor gan cabal the curshiel, dreimring o channetis nan gorsit nan skia. Gurniers for ook el the curei grihurt lia, gurn crua dollar doa the casagoas gadagadiav the MacLeans. Klangele han andrel dan heet sound the sunreik, dremakios kun einders kun tang hushen boy. Dreimri go tochio sig nag striok den tloa simak mirak jirak vidin of Suez. The Camerons Gurleon verlev helm hek ewan lochial Vier chodag and the vorag and the sayak griav Id mer chodag ve mer chodag gleser chonok rohion Shima go sam rus gagnak jul of Shias. The Mathesons Clonig vahan and gairlon hitch train the colderam and the lopas and yed in beard base of garak and now the voa the bin croa the lord kalak bugun you could beman nur the yed could ferek Nambi I've got train at the shade is an home it an inch and gee the kunya the gun home At Cochin Chakri in a city a gau Ganjan Moshak Nando gau he kush hadn't cown. And the last verse says, in common cause we shall stand together, and our blades will be over the heads of the strangers. Might sound like a bloody song, but there is nothing romantic about war. But certainly these people lived there at the time and they should know. And of course war bears its tragedy as well, and the Gael, the Highlanders celebrated everything in verse. Birth, death was commemorated, battles were extolled, ancient bloodlines were praised, everything. There were songs for rowing, songs for working, songs for spinning, songs for weaving the cloth. And it was all poetry, and all poetry was sung. But by the same bard, I thought I might give you another one before I move on to Sheelis MacDonnell, the great bard of Keppoch. She was a fantastic bard. And she was one of the great bards of the 15 as well. Sheelis na Kichbich, as they called her. A fierce Jacobite, a fierce nationalist. At the battlefield of Sheriffmuir in 1715, Alan MacDonald, the 14th of Clanranald, was to die of his wounds. See, the Gael, the Highlander, commemorated everything in verse, so that those verses could be handed on to their progeny, to their children and their grandchildren, lest they forget. It was the great Callum MacLean, the folklorist, brother of the late and great Sorley MacLean, who said, quote, "The written history will tell us what is politic for us to hear, but that which is handed down by word of mouth will tell us the full story." Well, at the battlefield of Sheriffmuir in 17, he had been badly wounded, almost nigh unto death, in the Pyrenees Mountains, previous to the 1715 rising, so much so that he was so badly wounded that he could no longer have children. But anyway, he died of his wounds here at Sheriffmuir, and the bard, Ian Dhu, commemorates that in this lament, this ancient keening song for the dead. The first verse translates, in the year that our enemies sprung upon us, the 1,715 years that have sped, we have lost the fragrant rose of our kindred, and the sting of it will be with us forever. O you, O princely lord of the Ranalds, who the Lord God chose to be our guide, now lying in their inner periphery of the shroud boards. And the bard goes on to extol his virtues in hunting, in hospitality, and the one in braveness in battle who would not turn in the face of the enemy. And in the last verse is a prayer to God, where it says, O you who took Moses out of Egypt and obeyed the swords of the three in the fire, O King of Kings, do not let oppression come upon us. King of Kings, do not let oppression come upon us. So this is a lament for the dead in the form of a beseechment, if you like. It's an incantation, it's an invocation. And this laments the passing of Alan MacDonald, the great chief of Clanranald. The song is called Mar Around the Vachki Caroline, Clanranald's Lament. Liana le magad milagan koig jig samidela snashake da reini mach chail shinur osar kinest stun in your fefri for agnum borsdom Mark ik sundak nam pinagara kruyak nak chirak nak tagav kudam nak girak nurago brikan chine Va mi juvel do spirit of war, va mi juvel do spirit of war. Vau chow mount skak for the grease betu skipper na faraki the casa chingalavak nuda yirigan garavorst Stugun bragan tanavar muaborst Stugun bragan tanavar muaborst Saunam shuva the garavaniks betu gan chalakir as to lie before me rapsa iraniak butun chalakir Sturain gu agus talavin muadon Sturain gu agus talavin muadon Seldom carig do chelis bin go nair at jee Jesus scared go chéad gul Viki kellen an yeku Ira len ag an yesh mar bachor Ira len ag an yesh mar bachor Gains nach you ac an gawd ag an ryk a hugsyn gan gawtach Can befo nach a caw gain Nish mar colin gan chiawn sin O dain rawd ys tawd a go ein followf O dain rawd ys tawd a go ein followf Ac i'r cymys iawn sy'n effet y sgolch y fwr na clarega ac yn triwr as yn eicyn gwn fi'n garag yn creican Rin ad ei ceic ar cor Rin ad ei ceic ar cor And in the second last verse of that piece, Lament to Clanranald, it mentions a hero who was called Rhyl MacKillionoig, Ranald, son of young Allen. He was Ronald MacDonald of Morar. He was a tacksman, a Dunhuasel, who had studied the art of combating the evil one. And he was the one who took the confession of Alan Jerag's his father before he died, who had given himself to evil, and he had accepted his confession. But Alan, of course, was just the exact opposite, a total gentleman. But he died of his wounds because of the curse that was put upon the family. But in that second last verse, Ranald, who was a mighty man with a two-handed sword, had been killed by a dun-coloured bull the previous summer, and that's why he couldn't join them at the rising. But after the bull gored him, he lay there dying, and he composed a pibroch for the bull that had killed him, and it was called An Taravoer. Such was the sense of humour and honour of the Highlanders, that even on their deathbed they would honour a bull. Was it not himself that composed An Tarav Jerag, which is now in the Moidart collection, which my good friend Alan MacDonald, the piper, collected many of them. But you see, poetry and song was one of the ways in which information was handed down. The other way, of course, was storytelling. And to be a bard, you had to know a good number of tales from memory. This was utterly essential, because every piece of verse that you compose was ingratiated in your culture. There was nothing modern about it. There was an ancient line from these poems and verses, even just the way that the vowels were put together, that would go back to a line way back to the kings of old, like Con of the Hundred Battles, and even long before that, to very ancient time.
One video.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we spoke about this in the way through, and what you're saying is so important. I don't really want to dilute it with any other aspect of the culture.
That's one of the reasons why I quite often don't get word now, because I said my website, like, please don't ask me to dilute this. I'm not going to do it. I'd rather starve.
I hear you.
Well, you know me anyway, Jamie. Anyway, are we on? Now, the way that these poems were constructed, they were constructed in such a way, the Greeks called it, it's a Greek word, iambic. It just means a heartbeat, bum bum, bum bum, bum bum. Even if you think of Robert Burns, when chap, man billies, leave the street and Druthi neighbours meet, that's iambic. Sometimes you get the triple foot or the quadruple foot, but the Gaels tended to use iambic. That last song that I sung, Lament to Clanranald, Mararan Devachki Kelain, was in a type of metre called strophic metre, which just simply means it can be 3 or 4 lines, but in the last line there's an extra syllable. That's all it means. And quite often they're either repeated or the last line's repeated. For example, in Lament to Rob Roy, the first line is Rein mi sug ag a charn, gab mi mul et nach gaun, mun scale hanna naul and rahachio. Second verse. Gyda gashgach mo gul, na ddau i'r hydd, smochrech len yn cheik, who farachorst. See that? They've got the extra syllable. That's what they call strophic metre. But iambic was very, very important. And the first song that I sung there, the Song of the Highland Clans, was very much like that. That one was actually triple-footed. Sishon Emesher and Jerever. So it's got that bum bum, bum bum, the heartbeat all the way through it. So the rhythm's actually built into it. It's actually in the song itself. I think since we're at Sheriff Muir, it would be important now to talk a wee bit about Sheelis MacDonnell of Keppoch. She was an amazing bardess. She was a daughter of Marci Creul, MacDonnell of Keppoch of the famous Colin and Bow. He was a famous Highland chief, and a very fierce one too, and a Jacobite. She composed many, many pieces, and this is actually a lullaby for her children. Oh, there's more cars coming. And this was a piece that she composed on the lead up to the 1715 Rising as a kind of anticipation of the rising going to take place. But the refrain of the song is a kind of talu, what they call a lullaby, if you like, for her children. It's a Haminam Chatel Snachdosh Gakmi. I am asleep, do not awaken me. In other words, do not awaken me until the rightful king is upon the throne. And this song is also quite graphic, as a lot of these songs are. It talks about how that many of the nobles were scattered after the Jacobite Rising of 1689, and she's lamenting that and calling them back to the cause. And there's many a woman lamenting for her husband who is missing. Then she talks about how that their bloods will, the sheaths of their swords will taste blood, their blades will taste blood. And of course it talks about, she refers to King George as the king of the pigs, that Whig King George. And she looks forward to the time when his neck will be in a noose. That was the way it was. At that particular time, these songs would have been regarded as treasonous, but the Highlanders were a law unto their own right, and nobody was going to tell them what to do. They were a sovereign people. So I'll give you this song anyway, Haminam Chatel by Sheelis MacDonnell. Gurmag mi amars gag finje fogreg. Haminam Chatel snadush gag mi. Gnahier gnevnes gunreitje go yorse. Haminam Chatel snadush gag mi. Grimig ben nuasal hanachiknyak na shamer. Gnahier gnevnes sikeri na honer. Ashir kaina no ashlan na khwariadri foseg. Haminam Chatel snadush gag mi. Moruai achlaun akaun nan kurische. Haminam Chatel snadush gag mi. Look ruskin naun nan budenen. Haminam Chatel snadush gag mi. Sheri na meiche sa kijk sheri jorse. Haminam Chatel snadush gag mi. Manchi koren an tawin Bihawak na kostig Aminam chato snadushkak mi Nanyedig shiv suats Anan kroatel sam dunyadak Edrishlan swashlan hua Agus kumanta Gun skewer sy shivawai veri fuadain nak bunyagain Sian in an chato gusun the I'll sing that last verse again if you want to.
Beautiful, yeah.
I'll sing the last verse. He is the king of the pigs, this Whig, King George. That's the way it translates. The king of the pigs. Sherina Michke Sakaik Sheri Jorse Aminam Chato Snadushkak mi Manchi Koden Nantawin Bihawak na kostig Aminam chato snadushkak mi Nanyelig shiv suas Anan kroatel santun yathak Edrishlan swashlan huages kumanta Skunskjur sy shivaiva Li fuatainak bunyagain Yanen kato Usun the cleave. Okay. Do you want to take a
shot? I'll put the camera up.
Maybe we could go to the Battlestone now,
What we're going to do is we're going to take a shot, not necessarily even as far as the Battlestone, Paddy, just onto the moor, so we can pan off just.
And this was a piece that she composed on the lead up to the 1715 Rising as a kind of anticipation of the rising going to take place. But the refrain of the song is a kind of talu, what they call a lullaby, if you like, for her children. It's a Haminam chatel snachdosh kakmi. I am asleep, do not awaken me. In other words, do not awaken me until the rightful king is upon the throne. And this song is also quite graphic, as a lot of these songs are. It talks about how that many of the nobles were scattered after the Jacobite rising of 1689, and she's lamenting that and calling them back to the cause. And there's many a woman lamenting for her husband who is missing. Then she talks about how that their bloods will, the sheaths of their swords will taste blood, their blades will taste blood. And of course it talks about, she refers to King George as the king of the pigs, that Whig King George. And she looks forward to the time when his neck will be in a noose. That was the way it was. At that particular time, these songs would have been regarded as treasonous, but the Highlanders were a law unto their own right, and nobody was going to tell them what to do. They were a sovereign people. So I'll give you this song anyway, Haminam Chatel by Sheelis MacDonell. Gurmak mi amars chud gag finje fogreg. Aminam chato snadush gag mi. Gnahiad gunyevnas gun reicha go yorse. Aminam chato snadush gag mi. Gurmak ben nuasal Hanachikniak na shamert, Genahier gnievnes sikeri na honer. Ashir kaina no ashlan na chwariadri foseg. Minam chato snadush kagmi. Moruai achlaun akaun nan kurische. Minam chato snadush kagmi. Lukrus kinanaun nan budenen. Minam chato snadush kagmi. Sheri na meiche sa keiksheri jorse. Minam chato snadush kagmi. Manchi koren antawin bihawak na kostig. Minam chato snadush kagmi. Nan jedig shiv suats anan kroatas am dunyadak. Edrishlan swashlan hua ages kumanta. Gunskjurs shivoi veri fuadain nak bunyakain. Sianinan chato gusundukliv. I'll sing that last verse again if you want to.
Beautiful, yeah.
I'll sing the last verse. He is the king of the pigs, this Whig, King George. That's the way it translates. The king of the pigs. Sheri na meiche sa keiksheri jorse. Minam chato snadush kagmi. Manchi koren antawin bihawak na kostig. Minam chato snadush kagmi. Nan jedig shiv suas anan kroatas an dunyadak. Edrishlan swashlan huages kumanta. Skunskjurs shivoi veri fuadainak bunyakain. Yanenan kato usum